Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I am Robbie Bettelon, covering Michigan State for the Only Colors, and of course, the Pistons for Detroit Bad Boys.
And Robbie, I think we got a pretty good show here. I mean, guys, honestly, we're into the kind of the dog days of the summer, right? We're a couple days out from August here, and August is, as you all know, the most exciting time of the calendar for the NBA. Nothing's happening in August. We're hoping maybe we could get some Jalen Turner news. Maybe that drags on to September. Who knows? Who cares? It is what it is at this point. So we're going to try to get through all the great questions you guys have already asked us in advance. As always, if you're tuning in live, put in any questions, things you want to talk about here to the live chat as well. We'll be grabbing those. But Robbie, I know you wanted to talk about this. You were excited about it because you said you saw The Odyssey last week's show. You actually inspired me on your review. You said it was a great movie. I went, you know what? I'm done waiting. And so I, with a good friend of mine, went to go see The Odyssey, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was so good. Is it fair to say that I think I said it on Twitter? I think this might be the best movie I've watched since Dune Part 2, and I love Dune Part 2. But I haven't watched a lot of movies. It seems like maybe you've watched more. Is that kind of your take? Is this the best movie you've seen in quite a while?
Yeah, I think especially just I saw it in IMAX too. Nashville has one of the IMAX theaters, so got the full true movie theater experience. And I'm going back on Friday to go see the new Spider-Man movie, so I obviously just can't get away from the theater right now. But frankly, I'm excited that there are good movies out there to watch right now. But yeah, as soon as I got back from The Odyssey, I was texting everybody, go see The Odyssey, go see The Odyssey. And I love that you compared it to Dune because I love the Dune movies. I'm pumped for the third one to come out. Pistons fan 11 here with Project Hail Mary. I have not seen it, but I heard it's fantastic.
Okay, I have a take on Project Hail Mary because this is 2 weeks in a row we're starting movies, and I'm saying screw it. Let's just stick with movies. Look, Project Hail Mary, I love sci-fi. Sci-fi is my favorite movie genre. If it's not comedy, I want to be watching sci-fi. And Project Hail Mary, and I don't mean this in an overly negative way. It's similar to The Martian in that if you're very sci-fi literate, it's kind of paint by numbers. You can kind of just see where it's going. There's nothing really too shocking one way or the other about it. And that's really the appeal of the book. That was also the appeal of The Martian. It's very accessible sci-fi, which is nice. But I enjoyed the movie. It was a good show. It's Star Trek without the philosophy. That's kind of what it is. It's but not flashy J.J. Abrams. But I like it. It was a fun movie.
I enjoyed those sci-fi movies and kind of the apocalyptic ones. I loved The Hunger Games. It was the last time that I've watched, just those dystopian world things. And so last night I actually watched The Long Walk. If anyone's heard of The Long Walk, it's a Stephen King book. It's this dystopian film where they choose one guy from every state, and so these 50 kids, teenagers, kind of just walk forever until there's one person standing. You have to keep a speed up. It's a gory dystopian movie, but the reason I wanted to watch it is because the main character in that movie ends up being the new Black Panther for all my Marvel people. So now that Avengers Doomsday is coming out at the end of this year, I'm trying to dive back into the Marvel universe after Endgame. So I'm trying to pick back up. But yes, also very excited about the new Spider-Man movie tomorrow night, dragging my fiance to go see that. So I'll have another movie review next week for the new Spider-Man movie.
Ooh, all right. Silo is a great TV show from Apple TV. That was a good one. I enjoyed especially the first season of that because, I mentioned Project Hail Mary can get to a little bit of a paint by numbers sort of thing for me because if you've watched a million sci-fi movies, you kind of know where it's going. I was getting that exact same feel all the way through the first season of Silo. And then in the last episode, they just realized they made it available to you that it was actually a rug that they were weaving, and they ripped it out from under you. because they knew that if you've watched a lot of sci-fi, a lot of this sort of genre, you'd be just picking up like, oh, okay, it's this, up, all right, it's that, and then all of a sudden it's not. And I loved that little twist at the end. The second season, not as, but I'm excited to see where it's gonna go. I like the good heady sci-fi movie. I think Silo kind of did that for TV, which was awesome.
Apple TV is underrated. Like their Apple shows are really Severance. Is. We love Severance.
Severance is fun.
Yeah, that's a fantastic show. But yeah, Apple's underrated. They got some good films over there.
I gotta ask, are you so Long Walk? Are you a big Stephen King fan? I'm not a Stephen King guy. There's not much that I know that's not a popular take. I'm not. I just don't like his work. I've not enjoyed
as
anything.
Embarrassing as it is to say this, I have not read a book since college. I'm 34, and the last time I read a book were the Hunger Games series.
Some would be proud of this.
Not much of a reader.
That's not a bad thing.
I'm a math guy.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So I am not much.
We're on the opposite wavelengths because I came back from the Odyssey, and there's a translation of the Odyssey I've been meaning to read for like 2 years, and now I'm kind of inspired. Like, oh, maybe I might actually go do a timeless story. It's awesome.
The other Stephen King film that I really liked, granted, he didn't make it, but a film about Stephen King's book, The Mist, I think is what it was called. Just like this fog it's like a horror movie. This fog takes over a town, and there's a bunch of monsters and whatnot in the fog.
I think I remember the movie.
Hide in a grocery store.
And like a super downer ending for no reason.
Extremely downer ending. Yeah. Huge twist at the end. That is the other Stephen King movie that jumped into my head.
Was Stephen King The Shining? Or whatever, the Overlook Hotel with Jack Nicholson. That was a good movie.
We need some movie nerds in our chat to chime in and see if our...
See, but that one, that was... who was the director that did 2001: A Space Odyssey? Kubrick. That was a Kubrick thing. And that's, I think, probably why it was so good. Because he's
Shining is Stephen King. Good call there.
But Stephen King did a TV series of The Shining because he didn't like the movie, and it was terrible. So I'm totally right to be giving Kubrick the credit for that one. Have you read? Oh, you said you haven't read if anyone's read the Book of Basketball by Bill Simmons, I don't know. It could be interesting. I might. It's usually not my kind of book, but maybe I'll give it a go.
Not much of a book guy, more of a math guy. And granted, I know you're an econ guy. So recently I wrote a post on Detroit Bad Boys, did my best to predict the Eastern Conference standings by the end of the year. If you haven't read it yet, go to Detroit Bad Boys. That's up there from a couple days ago. I ended up having the Pistons third. So feel free to comment if you agree, disagree. But Wes, we got a really good question, which I kind of geeked out about. So I kind of want to nerd out a little bit on this question. This came from Sparma in the DBB comments. And so after Sparma read my article, and then he started talking about this of just like, what do you think is the best or the most accurate method for predicting, or just in general from the past few years, kind of what has been the best? And so as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, I cannot wait to hear Wes's answer when it comes to like the econ side of things. So quick story. When I was a math teacher, this was, several years ago at this point, but DraftKings, FanDuel had just come out, and my friend Josh and I, we made our own Google Sheet. Go figure. Here's another Google Sheet situation. But basically we loved betting on college basketball every day. And so what we ended up doing is we kind of created our own model, and granted, the model was just averaging other predictions. And if you're a college basketball fan, I'm sure you've heard of like Bart Torvik, Ken Pomeroy, those kind of guys who make their predictions and have their own models and whatnot. So we basically would input whatever the spread was. We would average all their predictions, and then we would try to see if there was an edge on the line. And so that was like, I was so excited to just like have something that I was like, oh my gosh, like we had something to track. We could like see how it was doing. Sometimes if the edge was too big, it was like a bad play, but if it was a slight edge, it would be a good play. So I really enjoyed that. So he listed a whole bunch of different options on there, and one of them was like combining a bunch of different predictions, which is something that I had done in the past. And then he also asked about Vegas lines, and I get nowadays, especially like I'm tired of seeing prediction market stuff everywhere. And I get that people are, like the NBA is banning people from betting on games. And then the next, you could get a commercial break with a DraftKings commercial. So a lot of it is extremely hypocritical. But I do think nowadays, like Vegas lines are kind of my go-to prediction. And so I think about it from a expectation standpoint. So like if I'm about to watch a Lions game and I see Goff, his over under is like 299.5, I'm like, okay, they think, the passing defense of this team is terrible. Like Goff might go for 300 yards. Or I've enjoyed it from looking at the total. Like if you're looking at a football game that has a total of 41.5, you're like, okay, this is going to be a defensive game. Sometimes they even get to the 30s, right? If you're thinking of like a classic like Ravens Steelers like Thursday night game or something, like a defensive battle. Or most Lions games, their totals are in the 50s, and you're like, okay, this is going to be a really exciting game with a lot of scoring. So I have tended to look at betting lines. Granted, I have not bet in years now and don't plan on gambling anytime soon, but I still enjoy Vegas lines as kind of like a prediction. So with my kind of rant being over, I am so curious from your econ side, and your put your professor hat on, and let's talk your side of econ predictions.
I don't know how many listeners want to get the professor side of things, but I mean, I could go first though. What was the success rate? What was your hit rate on the model you guys created back in the day?
It depended. So we would keep track. So the next day we would record, I think it was like every half decimal. I did like intervals of every half decimal of how far away it was from the spread. And then we would record it. So every little half interval kind of had its own win-loss record. And so that's how like we either knew to stay away from those bets because, usually if the difference was too high, that meant, there was an injury or there was like way more money on the other side. So we found the sweet spot eventually. So it depends on the interval, but yeah, we had some success.
Oh, cool. Well, that sounds fun. And then obviously aggregating different predictions from very, very knowledgeable experts is obviously a good idea to do if you're trying to really dive into predictions like that. So when it comes to Vegas lines, when it comes to prediction markets, betting markets, you said earlier, like you see Jared Goff's passing number over under at 299.5. So you think that means that they think the other team's defense is bad. It is helpful to remember that there is not actually an individual or even a small group of individuals. What makes betting lines,
right?
Well, they've got their own algorithm, but what Vegas does, and this is using a lot of generalities. So there's, I'm taking liberties here, but super high level, Vegas has early bettors, really high rollers. They get in there early and they start putting their money down. Yeah, yep. They're sharp. It's a select group. And not only are they moving a lot of money, but because they're moving a lot of money, they're also very hesitant, right? So they're very careful with the money that they're deciding to put down. So that makes them fairly knowledgeable bettors. Those are effectively who sets the lines. It's these early bets along with some sort of proprietary algorithm, as you mentioned, right, to kind of level things on out and try to tilt it back towards the house. And then as betting lines change around the spread, what you're seeing there is, well, okay, maybe the early bettors thought Jared Goff was going to be at like over under 279, but then a ton of people, once that line went public, started taking the over. Well, now we're going to hedge. So now Vegas is going to raise that line up. So what you're seeing with betting lines moving is actually a relatively informed average position of what people who have a lot to lose think is going to happen. So if you guys wanted, I could put in there's a good series of articles from an economist, Brian Kaplan, who is at George Mason University, basically looking at this thing that we call rational ignorance and rational indifference, two very related, similar topics, but not exactly the same. The point is that when you have more to lose, you tend to be more discerning with the decision that you're making. You're raising the cost, raising the stakes. Betting's one of those things that raises the stakes, raises the cost to you. So it's one thing to be chatting with your friends and say, I think the Lions are going to win tonight. I think the Pistons are going to win tonight. It's another thing to say, I'm willing to put down $50 that says I'm right and the Lions or the Pistons are going to win. As soon as you introduce that additional cost, you've raised the stakes of being wrong, which means now if you were just talking, you didn't actually think that, it's kind of a toss-up game for you, you're probably not putting the money down. And if you're not putting the money down, it doesn't get translated into the Vegas odds. The Vegas odds are only the people who put the money down. So all this is to say, generally speaking, prediction markets are pretty accurate because of those things. In economics, we have something that's similar to this. It's called a futures market. And futures are weird because it's betting on the future price of usually commodities. But what's funny is the only people that are doing that, and when I say betting, I mean they're like making agreements to buy at a future price today, right? They think the price is going to go down. I think I can beat that, so I'm going to sell it to you for a higher price. We'll agree to it now. The only people making those bets are making those contracts are like really ingrained in the industry. So you get some really weird stuff, like the futures markets for oranges is actually a better long-term predictor of the weather in Florida than weathermen tend to be. And that's because the people that are really in there, right, really into that market and industry, they have a really good sense based on how the planning went, what it's going to look like in a few months. So all this is to say, prediction markets usually very good, betting lines usually very good. I do have a little bit of worry that the proliferation of online betting, especially kind of the like casinoification of these apps, it psychologically it kind of lowers the stakes. It makes it seem like you're not actually putting $50 down because they'll give you 25 back, right? If you make enough bets, that sort of thing. All of those things are going to lower the stakes, and that's lowering the cost, making it more likely that a person that's not as confident in their position might actually put money down. So I'm worried about that long term as more bettors really get into these. But as of right now, I would still say it's probably the safest prediction to go off of. What is the Vegas line at? What's Poly Market saying on that subject? Probably pretty solid.
Yeah, if somebody wants to make the argument that gambling is slimy and takes advantage of people that, are not as well informed as, your sharp bettors and all that, I will 100% agree with you. I've gotten tired of all the prediction markets everywhere, Kalshi, Poly Market, and the fact that you can like bet on war now. All of it is just very, very slimy. I will say I've enjoyed, let's say the Pistons play somebody tonight and, I want to know like, okay, how competitive is this game going to be? And I see like, oh, the Pistons are favored by double digits. Like, okay, this has the potential to be a blowout tonight, and then maybe I check at 5 p.m., like an hour or two before the game's going to start. And then the spread is only like 5 points towards the Pistons. And I'm like, ooh, okay, why did it drop? Is it dropping because people are hammering the opposite team? Is there an injury? Like, is somebody going to sit out? And now that they're out, that the spread has dropped. So I have gone away from gambling, and I have gone. I'm now using spreads, over-unders, things like that to just give me like a mental preview, an expectation of kind of like what Vegas predicts the game is going to be like. And frankly, if you're somebody that, pays for all 30 teams on NBA League Pass or something, like you may use betting lines to find a spread, that is maybe within 1 to 2 points. And you're like, okay, this may be the most competitive game of the night. Or maybe their money lines are both roughly minus 110 or something like that. Tells you it's going to be a pretty even game. And what would be, if the Thunder are playing the Bucks or something and the Thunder are favored by, 15.5 points, you're like, okay, I kind of already know how that game's going to go. I'm going to turn on a different game. So I do think there's value in using Vegas lines, in using prediction markets and things like that, just from like trying to understand or preview how a game is going to go. But I know that some people have a real passion for being like anti-gambling and in anti-prediction markets and whatnot. And I'm totally on board with it if that is the case. And maybe they've skipped through this part of the conversation at this point.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy them from just like an expectation standpoint.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't know the last time I gambled in any capacity. It is interesting. Yeah, I don't like losing money, and that's just kind of the way I have rationalized it for myself. I think the only thing I want to add to this entire conversation is just that it's very tempting because of how, I don't want to say accurate, but how well some of these betting lines actually do predict outcomes. It is tempting to go and say or believe that there's some insider information, like, oh, Vegas knows something. They know something about this injury to Cade Cunningham. He's probably not going to play tonight because the line shifted late. They don't. The only thing that's going on there is as you're getting closer and closer and closer to the deadline to actually designate your injured players, more and more people are getting skeptical that Cade Cunningham's going to play. It's actually it's far more simple to say there's a lot of money that moved really late because all of a sudden bettors got cold feet about a potentially injured superstar Cade Cunningham than to say, oh, the Pistons picked up the phone, went over, said, hey, Vegas, we're not going to play him, but we're going to wait a couple of minutes. Like that's not what's happening. But because the prediction markets can be relatively representative of the outcomes we actually see, it gets tempting to think that when in reality, it's actually just a really interesting and in some ways, kind of uplifting, fascinating example of kind of knowledge combining together to figure out a problem. In this case, figure out what's going to happen in the outcome of a basketball game. Maybe we could find better problems with our collective knowledge, but hey, you know what? A good example of it working right there. This is not right. I did not really expect to take this question in this direction when we got it, but I appreciate you indulging me on this side of it. Obviously we never get to do this. So
it's fun. The math side, I think, that's like interesting to me of like, how they even come to figuring out a line in the first place. So I don't know. I'm fascinated by it, and math and econ are kind of similarly related, so as soon as I saw it, I was like, can't wait to hear what Wes says about this one. But hopefully,
guys, real quick, if you did want to read the couple of articles I mentioned, go over and navigate to the YouTube video. The live stream YouTube video, I did drop them into the chat, and that chat does stay up even after the live has ended. You can access that as well. So if you really want to read an economist talking about rational ignorance, go for it. They're in there. Otherwise, I'll take off the professor hat now. We can talk. Yeah,
this is no longer a Pistons podcast. This is a movie podcast and a math/econ podcast. No.
I listened to that podcast.
Yeah. Now that we have upset our anti-gambling listeners, we promise we will get to some actual ball. Wes, we got a question from Chaz Malibu in the DVB comments. He said, when will DeMar DeRozan sign with the Raptors so we can all put this nightmare behind us and be at peace again? I am going to assume he just wants to know our opinion of DeMar DeRozan on the Pistons. We have had this conversation like here and there in our DBB Slack, but I'm not sure I know exactly where you are at with the idea of DeMar. So why don't you go ahead and go first, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pulling up the stats that he had last year. So DeMar DeRozan last season, 77 games. 18.4 points per game, 2.9 rebounds, 4.1 assists, almost 50% from the floor, 32% from three and 87 from the stripe. He was a 52% effective field goal percentage player, which, if you'll remember from an earlier conversation we have had about Ibuka Corey, when you're looking at effective field goal percentage, you'd really, for a guard, you'd like that to be closer to 60. So he's not all that efficient of a scorer, which, if you have followed DeMar DeRozan's career, not all that new or noteworthy. That's just kind of what he's been. DeMar DeRozan, when he was in his prime, was probably one of my favorite players to watch just because he played an entertaining brand of basketball. It was a little counterculture at the time, obviously a lot of mid-range heavy, incredible athlete, but great ball handler, good passer, underrated in that way. And I never thought he was as bad of a defender as his reputation was, though he was obviously not good. Now, though, he's what? He's going to be 37. The athleticism's solid, but it's not what it once was. And he does not shoot threes. There was a stretch there in his career where he tried to push that up. His last year in Toronto was actually 3.6 attempts per game. He had his last year in Chicago, 2.8 attempts. 2 seasons ago in Sacramento, 3.3 attempts, and then 1.9. So only 2 really attempts from 3 last year, 32% on that. It's just, that's not something that he does, that he's willing to do. He's a weird kind of tweener at this point because he's a cross between a power forward and a shooting guard. Like that's just a bizarre sort of archetype of player. He can score the basketball. So if you want to say like the Pistons need more punch, bring in DeMar DeRozan on a minimum contract, have him come off the bench and be a scorer in a lineup that's going to have a decent amount of spacing for him to operate. Like I get the idea, I get the vision there. I personally would rather have those minutes go to Ron Holland just to like see what the Pistons have there. I wouldn't necessarily want to take that opportunity away from the 21-year-old to give it to a 37-year-old player on a minimum contract. I guess I was just like, I wouldn't want to do it. I would be largely out on the idea of DeMar DeRozan. But if the Pistons did do it, or if you were a fan that really wanted to add DeMar DeRozan for that scoring punch, a little bit of self-creation, a little bit of playmaking for others, like I get it. I understand the perspective. I'm just not there with it. I think you're in the same boat, right?
Yeah, I'll even take it a step further. Like, I'm so out on the idea of DeMar. I do not want him on the team. It feels like he just has to have the ball in his hands at this point. In order
he does.
For him
He's not an off-ball mover in any
right.
sense. Even like relocation, that's just not something he really thrives at.
And I think your point of like, one, if he wants to come here, he's coming off the bench, and with him being 37 or whatever, he's just slowing down. And I think he kind of has been forced to guard power forwards because I don't think he can guard anybody 1 through 3 at this point. And if he's playing power forward, with our episode last week, we both had Ron as the backup power forward. I'm not moving Ron as to the like 11th guy coming off the bench. And I'm just like, I would much rather have Ron playing than DeMar. If I'm not mistaken, I'm almost positive Ron shot more threes than DeMar, which granted DeMar, he's just not what this team needs, I think, at power forward. And ultimately, because he gets so many of his buckets inside the arc, here's where I'm so into Asar getting those reps. That like, if Asar is going to start making a jump as an offensive player, as like a bit of a jump shooter, I want him shooting the shots that DeMar shoots. So, I've already got a player on the roster that I would want attacking that 15-foot, 18-foot kind of fadeaway jumper. So I get the appeal of somebody like DeMar if this was, 4 or 5 years ago, but like, I think he's going to Miami. I think he's going to Cleveland, somewhere else where they, he's probably a better fit there. And I just, with all the shooting that they have gotten this offseason, Detroit, all the 3-point shooting, I just feel like DeMar DeRozan we're going in the opposite direction. And I just do not want him, any anywhere close to this team.
Some interesting stats here. So Order of the Blazing Horse mentions Ron shot more three-pointers than Danis did. He did, confirmed that. So Danis Jenkins last year, 195 three-point attempts. Ron Holland was 198. Jenkins obviously made more. My first instinct was that this was a games played issue. It was not. Jenkins actually played 72 games, which that slipped by me. I didn't, he kind of came on kind of midway in the year, right? So like that was a number that surprised me. Ron Holland played 78. The difference is minutes. So Ron Holland played about an extra 100 minutes than Danis Jenkins did.
But still
even
similar.
So, that's shocking. Yeah, that is shocking. DeMar DeRozan, though, is the good comparison, I think. You brought this up. So DeRozan, 77 games. Ron Holland, 78 games. I mentioned Ron Holland shot 198. DeMar DeRozan, about 50 less three-point attempts, 147. So, yeah, just not something he's even willing to do, given that he also played, I'm just going to assume, played a ton more minutes. Almost 1,000 more minutes than Ron Holland did over the same number of games. Coach Casey does know DeMar DeRozan, and Dwayne Casey is still part of the Pistons front office.
Here's my thing with DeMar coming off the bench. If he has to have the ball in his hands, that means the ball is not in Okori's hands. It's not in Danis's hands. And I would much rather, if it means DeMar has to have the ball and then those guys lose some on-ball reps, Ron Holland is losing minutes, I would rather all three of those guys play over DeMar, given they also have a skill set that I would rather have on this team than DeMar does. Ron, I'm hoping the three-point shooting comes around. We'll see if he ever gets there, but he's at least a chaos causer on defense, whereas DeMar is a traffic cone. And, we're going to have Danis and Okori. I'm assuming Danis will be on the roster for the foreseeable future. I know that he's got one more year and then he'll be a restricted free agent. But I'm just like, give the ball to the young guys and let's see what they can do. Let Ron shoot some more corner threes. Let's see if he can get, into those mid 30s from the corner. I'm just so much more on give it to the young guys, and DeMar just probably needs to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of the takeaway of the whole offseason at this point, right? I mean, like, look, it seems like the Pistons did try to make a big move, right? It seems like they tried to bring in, like an Austin Reeves or something, right? They went for it, and it didn't end up happening. So where did they pivot? Well, they pivoted to what further steps can these young guys make? The biggest question, I think, on this roster right now, and we've talked about a few of them. We talked about the ball handling. We've talked a little bit about the shooting. I think it's better, but that's still going to be a question hanging over this team until it's proven to not be one. And then we've talked about the Tobias Harris of it all. I think that's the big one for me, because when you looked at what this team did last year, if Cade was really being pressed, if they just, late in the shot clock, they needed a bucket, it went to Tobias in the post. Who's going to take that on now? It should probably be Jalen Duren, but will it be? Right? Could it be John Collins? I'd be skeptical. I'd be worried about that if it was.
Also
but it
skeptical.
be, right? If it's Asar Thompson, like, that's a little bit scary too, but maybe it could be. Could it be a rookie, right? Could it be a Buka Okori? Could it be a Dane? Like, that's the big overarching question, I think, to me right now. And as Pistons fan 11 has said, kick the can to the deadline.
I agree.
Yeah, I think they went flexibility here, and then said, we're going to put our couple of young players in a position to take over that role. And hey, maybe by the time we get to the deadline, now we're not actually looking for like a number two who can handle the ball. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was Buka Okori, since Pistons fan 11 brings it up. Maybe it was Jalen Duren figuring out that he can do what he wants in a mid-post isolation facing up to the rim. Like, maybe that's your backup offense there. Like, it could be. So I think that they're invested in figuring that out at this point, and it'll let them make an informed choice there at the deadline with the type of player they need to go after. But DeMar DeRozan doesn't help that.
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan would be the Band-Aid.
Yes. I'm going to bring up another movie, because this is now a movie podcast, but this almost reminds me of a Moneyball situation of like, hey, you can't
Replace him in
play
the aggregate.
Yeah, you can't play that guy at first anymore. Like, he's not on the team. I almost feel like Trajan didn't go. Well, he did try, but like at this point, it's like, hey, we didn't get Cade's second option or like second star, whatever it is that you want to call it. So right now, your options are Duren and Asar in the starting lineup. Like, JB Bickerstaff, sorry if you were looking for, somebody else to give Cade some relief, but hey, let's sink or swim with Duren and Asar. If Asar's handle can tighten, can he knock down that 15-footer, be a little bit more aggressive on offense? Maybe he can help there. I'd like to see Duren in a little bit more of a playmaking role now that he's basically the second option on this team. In that he basically was game planned for in the playoffs. So I feel like he needs to take a step up in that, just like as like a short role playmaker, finding, Collins in the corner after Cade hits him on a pick and roll, or maybe Asar in the dunker spot, kind of like we saw in the New York Knicks playoff series 2 years ago. But I'm down for it. I'm down for like riding or dying until February with Asar and Duren and kind of that secondary playmaking role. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah, one way to look at it would be the training wheels are off, right? I mean, you're going to pay Duren a large contract here, even if it maybe is not as large as he would want it to be. You're going to pay Asar Thompson a large contract here, and you've just taken away the safety blanket. You've taken away the safety net for the offense. And so you guys are going to have to figure it out. And that can be quite informative if you're thinking about paying these players, already going to be paying one of them, thinking about paying the other one as well. So there's some good that can come with that. It also could not go well. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm intrigued to see how it turns out. So you mentioned two things that we could transition into here. We talked a little bit about Ron Holland, and you also mentioned a number 2 star for Cade Cunningham. Which transition do you want is the question I want to ask you.
I want to go the Ron route because I like this question that we got on Twitter. How do we ensure that Ron Holland's best years are in Detroit and not somewhere else? He was in trade rumors this summer. I wouldn't doubt it if maybe he ends up in trade rumors when we get to February. I'm going to ask a clarifying question to you, Wes. What do Ron Holland's best years look like on the court? Like, if Ron Holland is having, his best years, what are we seeing with the eye test? Like, how would you define Ron's best years on the court?
Okay, so I love this clarifying question because it ultimately changes the answer to the actual question that Josh Kettlewell answered, right? Because if you're afraid Ron Holland's going to go Chris Middleton somewhere else, right? Become basically an all-star, that type of offensive player, then what you have to do to ensure that happens in Detroit is give him a bunch of opportunities, right? Let him expand his offensive game, tap into that scoring potential that he showed in the G League, and just ride the roller coaster a little bit, because even though he's been working on that, certainly in the background, he hasn't really had the opportunity to do it yet at any sort of scale at the NBA level. So that's the one answer to this question. The other answer to this question is, if you think Ron Holland is a defensive ace as a wing or forward with good size off the bench, who is otherwise a very good hustle player, so kind of like like if you could throw back to maybe like a Tony Allen, right, but a little bit taller. Like, if that's what you think Ron Holland is, then I kind of think you need to ask the question of, if that's the piece you have to give up to get something a little bit better, does it matter that those best years weren't in Detroit? Like, that archetype of player fits the Detroit Pistons identity to a T. They also already have one who's better at it in Asar Thompson. So, like, if you got to make a switch, and his best years being this defensive ace off the bench are in Memphis, so what, right?
I think the reason that they haven't signed a backup power forward is to give him those opportunities of like, hey, you're coming off the bench, You're playing either forward role. You don't have to define it. You're a backup forward at this point, but it's kind of fascinating that his time in the G League before he got drafted, he essentially played point guard. Like, he was just like an on-ball type of player. And
admittedly, that entire context was just awful. It was terrible for him. It was terrible for Matas Buzelis. It tanked both of their draft stocks, even though Ron still went top 5. Like, he wasn't getting that buzz until the Pistons actually picked. Like, oh yeah, that was.
And now the program doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, well, that year is why, but to your point, it was on ball.
It's just been so fascinating that he was like such an on-ball player the year before he got drafted, and he just has like not been an on-ball player at all in Detroit. So I guess my definition of what I think his best years would be is a starting small forward where Asar is the 2 and Cade is the 1, and they have this jumbo lineup that I keep preaching. If Cade Cunningham is your third worst perimeter defender or third best perimeter defender in a starting lineup, is just like a fascinating kind of idea to build your team around. I wonder if I'm putting him in this like Herb Jones kind of like archetype of like maybe a Derek Jones Jr. kind of archetype of like a 3-and-D off-ball wing who really uses most of his energy on defense as like a point of attack defender, but becomes kind of a catch and shoot threat from the corners, maybe from the wings. And I don't know that I see him as kind of like an on-ball creator yet. I would be fascinated to see during the season if he can get more opportunities to kind of see if there is something there. But right now, I kind of feel like his main role is like a chaos causer on defense. Like, hey, let's get out and transition and run because he's a great transition player. So right now, he's just seemed like an off-ball, kind of like you said, defensive ace. I just need the shooting to come around. And if the shooting still hasn't come around by February, that's when I'm going to be nervous about his future in Detroit. If we've given him 2.5 years of opportunity, 2.5 years of working with Fred Vinson, 2.5 years, and he still like isn't getting over 30% from deep, that's when I'm going to start getting concerned. So I do think the opportunity is going to be there. I know that he didn't play much in the playoffs this past season. Maybe he'll use that for some motivation. But I think if his on-ball game can grow and he shows some flashes and we can get that 3-point percentage, above 30%, and we finally start seeing some growth from beyond the arc, I'm going to feel more optimistic. But right now, I'm like torn between with what you said of like, I really want to see it through, or does Ron Holland become a piece in a trade that kind of goes and gets you that guy that you hope Ron Holland can be one day?
So after last week's episode, I doubled down on my curiosity with Ron Holland's G League stuff. I watched some of the old games again. And then I found a doc where I had a little write-up of what I thought of Ron Holland's game for that draft. And granted, I was lower on him, but what was standing out to me was this is actually a bit of a through line, I think, now between the only other first-round pick that Trajan Langdon has made in Abuka Okori. And that is that they both just got to the rim at will, and they both generated a ton of free throws. Here's what I literally, this is from like 3 years ago now, right? I wrote, Holland is an explosive finisher and gets to the rim regularly, resulting in 5 free throw attempts per game. Considering the G League has a 1-for-2 rule, this is incredibly impressive. He does have a solid handle, and he is a willing passer. But for the Pistons, he's a gamble on legitimate two-way upside if they can afford to add another bad shooter to the roster, right? Like that's the vision. That was the vision with Ron Holland coming out, which, to the point we were talking about last week. Like, this was a guy that was supposed to be a walking paint touch, get to the free throw line, like explosive. What is this? This sounds like what we're talking about with the Abuka Okori, except now we're talking about a wing or a forward instead of a guard. So my hope, I don't think that the on-ball playmaking thing was really real. He averaged a ton of turnovers in the G League, but he was a willing passer, so it wasn't, you weren't like, well, he's selfish, right? It's like he'll make the read. He's just not an advanced playmaker. It was just the paint touches. So you know what? let's see it, right? I think that's where I'm at with Ron Holland. This was a fun question, though, Pistons fan 11. Is there a reason Ron Holland cannot be close to as good of a defender as Asar Thompson is? I would say two things, Robbie. I would say first, Ron Holland is already fairly close as a defender to Asar Thompson, but the gap between the two is that while Ron Holland is a exceptional NBA athlete, Asar Thompson's an alien in that regard. I think there's just a physical limitation but with these two guys where Asar can move in any direction at 1,000,000 miles an hour and also put his head at the top of the backboard, where Ron Holland is, he's pretty quick. He's very fast very fast in the straight line. He can jump out of the gym as well. He's pretty strong, but like, he's not that.
Yeah, I think the leap from Asar is just like defensive IQ. Like the fact that Asar can be, oh, nice, Richard. Yeah. The fact that Asar can like pick up somebody 90 feet, but also can be like a weak side rim protector at the same time. Like I keep going back to that sequence in Orlando where they're making their like insane run. I forget what game it was, but the comeback, he makes like a dribble handoff assist to Cade, who knocks down a corner three. He comes back, Orlando comes back the other way, and he makes that like insane block on Wendell Carter Jr. at the rim. Ron's not doing any of that from a rim protection standpoint. I did see a tweet recently. I forget who it came from, but some account shared steal percentage. It was the top 10 in steal percentage, and Asar was number 1 and Ron was number 5. So from like a perimeter defense standpoint, from like a chaos causing standpoint, I think they're right there with each other, which is kind of why I like want Ron. I wish we had a 4 on the roster so that Ron could kind of be more of a point of attack defender. I guess he still could kind of do that. Maybe I'm like getting too nitpicky about, he's playing power forward, so he's not guarding, the guy coming up the court with the ball or whatever. But I like, that's why I think his like potential is, or if he hits his potential, he's starting next to Asar and he's starting next to Cade, but he has to be like that 3 and D. He has to be money from the corners if that lineup is going to work. But the amount of chaos that them two, the 9 to 5, the chaos that they would be causing with Cade Cunningham as, your third best perimeter defender, that is such a fascinating lineup to me, and one that I feel like just embodies like the city of Detroit, kind of goes back to the bad boy style of just being super physical, super defensive. But I just think Ron has to come around with the 3-point shot, and who knows if that'll happen, but we'll see.
Ron Holland would get so much more love as a defender nationally and even in the Pistons community, in my opinion, if there weren't just such a natural and obvious one-to-one comparison for another player who's roughly a similar body type, plays roughly the same position, and just happens to be probably just the best perimeter defender in the NBA presently. Right. Yep. Like if Asar Thompson's not here, we're all talking about how great Ron Holland is defensively, and we'd be right to be doing it. All right. There was a good question here from Jeffrey Mercer asking about a surprise number 2 star. So what player do you think that is currently on the roster, not including Jalen Duren, that could surprise us all and become that number 2 star next to Cade Cunningham? You know what, Robbie? I want you to take, if you're gonna take the Asar Thompson route here, you got to really back it up, because number 2's got to score.
I have two. I think it's Asar. Look, I think I'm higher on Asar as an on-ball baskets, and he will this season. He's gonna. I think, similar to the Moneyball theory, sorry, JB Bickerstaff, you don't really have a second ball handler in the starting lineup. It's going to be Jalen Duren. It's going to be Asar Thompson. I'm willing to sink or swim the first 50 games heading up to the deadline with Asar as a secondary playmaker. I just think his ceiling is the highest of anybody else on the team except Cade Cunningham. If Cade is your captain of the offense, Ausar is your captain of the defense. He is the second most important player on this team. As much as Jalen Duren was fantastic last season, he's a 20-10 big man. I just think Ausar has the most room for growth as opposed to comparing it to Jalen Duren. I'm just willing to give Ausar more on ball reps and see what happens. He may shoot 30% on mid-range shots, and we're like, okay, maybe we really do need to go get this second star at the deadline. So I'm just I'm so high on Ausar this upcoming season, and I'm trying to give him as many on-ball reps as possible. It doesn't help that boxing picture came out today where he looks absolutely yoked and massive, and I'm just I'm buying all the hype on Ausar Thompson. I'm drinking all the Kool-Aid on Ausar Thompson, and I want to see where it goes. Yes. Point Ausar. I'm willing. I just want to see where it goes. I'm going to throw my second one in there real quickly before you jump in. I think John Collins may get back to Atlanta version of John Collins here, to where I think he's going to shoot the most threes that he has ever shot in his career. He hasn't shot more than 4 per game. He has never averaged more than 4 threes per game. I need him to get to 5. He as a 40% 3-point shooter, I'm trying to, ramp that volume up and to see if that efficiency sticks. And then at the same time, we've never had a kind of 4-5 tweener where John Collins can play some small ball 5, and then you kind of have this stretch 5, but he's also a stretch 5 that could then, you can throw him lobs in the pick and roll. And I just feel like John Collins is going to be a more useful player than Tobias Harris was, because his archetype and his skill set is better fitting for this roster. So I felt like the easy answer for this question was Ausar, but my I'm going to throw somebody else out there other than Ausar would be John Collins. And he averaged, I think 14 points per game or something last time, but I don't see why he can't get to 17, 18, and maybe Duren's averaging 17, 18 at the same time. So my other answer would be John Collins.
My thing with Ausar is we just haven't seen it. We didn't see it at OTE. We haven't seen it in the NBA. His effective field goal percentage career high was 2 years ago, 55%. Last year was 53%. Let's see, 2-point field goal percentage last year, 54%. And that's really all the shots that he takes. He's only gone over 10 points per game in one season. It was 2 years ago, 10.1. It's not something that he's really shown the ability to do. And so my stance on it is, go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think, forget the scoring part, do you think Ausar could be a secondary playmaker from an assist standpoint? Could he reach 4 to 5 assists per game? Do you think that's something that he could do if he has the ball in his hands more? Doesn't necessarily need to be the pick and roll ball handler, but if he's used as a DHO guy, if he's used, as kind of a threat, instead of, maybe Duren at the elbow and him doing a little face-up game, could Ausar do that and, kind of bring some gravity into the middle of the court? He has the IQ. He has the IQ to make the open read. So even if he's not a scorer, do you think he could attract enough attention offensively to dish out 4 to 5 assists per game?
So I just went to look at what
I'm not sure if he's even reached
Green.
3. Yeah. So a Draymond role.
So he assists per game last year was 3.1. That was his career high. The reason I bring up Draymond Green is because if you are it's not necessarily the archetype of player that Ausar Thompson is. That would be the wrong way to put it. But the way that Ausar Thompson struggles with the ball in his hands is very limiting as a secondary playmaker. He's a little high He plays with high hips, and when he has the ball in his hands, I've talked about this before. It's still one of the weirdest things I think in the NBA right now. He's like robotic, outside of a flash every now and then, where he's got this nice little spin move that he pulls out of nowhere in transition. Like in the half court, he has stiff hips, he plays high chested, and he's kind of robotic with the ball in his hands. And that's usually not the guy that you're going to say, okay, take this pick and roll, play with the ball a little bit, try to create an advantage, and then spray out from there. I don't question his vision. I think he's a very good connective passer. I think he's great in transition, which is what Pistons fan 11's bringing up. And that's not an issue there because you're moving mostly in a straight line. But in the half court, the only way I can really see him really playmaking is either off a standstill or as a handoff, which you already brought up Jalen Duren. Like those are things that they already use Jalen Duren for. And when Jalen Duren's doing it, he's got a little bit more scoring punch that comes along with it that you just don't see from Ausar Thompson. So like, is it possible? I think sure. And I would like to see Ausar in more DHO scenarios, more as a screen setter in a pick and roll, even though he doesn't set great screens, just to kind of leverage the space that he is given offensively. But like he's, in terms of like bring the ball up, orchestrate the offense, take a bunch of pick and rolls, I just don't, he doesn't move like that. It makes me really worried. It's part of why he struggles with pressure, with ball pressure.
I do think there are some coordination like limitations there. Like sometimes when I see him bringing the ball up and it's like he's dribbling, and then the ball is up here and his hand is down here and he has to like look because he didn't realize that he lost the ball or something. I do think he has to tighten up the handle. I think I'm just like so high on his IQ that I'm like, dude, you're going to figure this out like one way or another. For whatever reason, I just feel like I'm convinced that he's going to figure it out. But there's certainly like, I felt like Andre Drummond had some limits with his coordination. Like sometimes I felt like he just didn't have great hands. I kind of get that with the star too. Yeah. And so I get where you're coming from. I think I'm just not yet convinced. And I just am like, man, let's push it to the limit. Like give him as many opportunities as possible and let's see what happens. Granted, now if you're 25-25 heading into the, All-Star break or heading into, the trade deadline, you're probably making some changes after that. But I'm going to assume your number 2 star is not Ausar then.
It wouldn't be. And I'll transition here, but Pistons fan 11 says, use a Corey to teach Ausar Thompson how to dribble, use all the dribble tricks. I do want to make one thing clear. This isn't like, to me, I don't think this is a skill limitation for Ausar Thompson at all. I think he can become a better ball handler, and I would like him to become a better ball handler. I think it'd be great for like the rip and go, that kind of Giannis attack drive, right? Kind of the rampage dribble where your guy's guarding you from the paint, you get the ball on the wing, and you just go to the rim and figure they're going to get out of the way, or you're going to make a nice little kick out pass. Like that's something I would love to see out of Ausar Thompson more, especially with how athletic he is. But it's a fluidity with the ball, and just like, let's be honest, guys, if you aren't fluid with movement wise, if you're not fluid with the ball in your hands, by the time you reach the NBA, it's probably just not going to come. Like that's just something that's really not in. Like how many guys do you just think back yourself? How many players do you remember watching in college or watching their first few years in the NBA going like, they look a little robotic when they start putting the ball on the floor.
It's a little awkward sometimes. He looks a little
awkward. And then like 2 years later, it's like, oh man, like that's Kyrie. No, it just doesn't happen like that. I will say too, this is something I used to say about Jalen Duren's defense. Saying, well, if you were a guy in your first couple of years in the league, if you were not a good defender, very rarely do you just magically become a good defender. And damn it, I was wrong about Jalen Duren in many, many ways, but I was not wrong about that. He's still not a very good defender. I think he's gotten a lot better. I think he's much closer to neutral now, but he's still not locking down the paint. You're actually asking Ausar Thompson to do more of that. So point is, that's more of my concern with Ausar. That wouldn't be a concern though with Ibuka Corey. And I'll be just totally honest with you. I think if the answer to that question is not Jalen Duren, right? The question took Jalen Duren off the board. Who could be the second star? if you're thinking offensively, that number 2 option, if the answer is not Jalen Duren, my honest answer is they are not on the roster. But if I had to pick somebody, it would be Ibuka Okori is far better right out of the gates than any of us really thought he was. He has overcome all of the low expectations of his career to date and gone on to have an absolutely incredible career at Stanford from the jump. If he replicates that, he's the only player on this roster that kind of has the play style that you could then say, oh yeah, okay, that's your second star. Because if Okori really hits, yeah, he's undersized, but it's a guard who's going to get to the rim whenever he wants. He's going to generate a lot of free throw opportunities for himself. He's going to generate a lot of kick out opportunities for players around him. And he's going to score the basketball because, yes, as Pistons fan 11, ball's on a string for him. So, like, if I had to pick, I'd say Ibuka Okori magically does look like rookie year Donovan Mitchell. Like, I wouldn't say it's out of the question. It's a very low likelihood, but it might happen. And if it does, then that's my answer. Otherwise, if it's not JD, someone else arrives in February, and that's my answer to that question.
Yep, he's on the Pelicans. What? All right,
maybe. Well, let's go to one more here. This is from ABW 17. What would we think about trying to pry Cam Johnson loose to help Denver get under the second apron and re-sign Watson? I doubt there'd be a lot of prying here. Cam Johnson's definitely overpaid, but what do you think?
So ABW listed in the rest of that, he kind of proposed his own trade with Zeke Naji coming along with Cam Johnson. We sent Duncan Robinson out as well as a first. I would assume if Denver is giving Zeke Naji to a team, picks are coming with that to take on that contract of his. And right now they're the only team in the second apron. So like, if we're going to do them favors, I need picks coming with it. I'm not sending picks out to help Denver clear their cap space. I like the idea of Cam Johnson. I like the idea that he can kind of be this 3-4. And if Duncan is off the team, I feel better about our forward room. If it's Asar, Collins, and then Holland and Johnson, it just makes me feel better from like a balance standpoint, instead of feeling like Duncan or Kevin Huerter kind of have to play small forward at this point. He is on a 1-year deal. I get the appeal of it. I think if anything, so Peyton Watson has been starting to grow on me, but I think you're going to have to give up assets for that. And then I also think like Duncan right now is the main guy that has to be sent out in any trade, like just from a value standpoint, from a contract standpoint, like he's just the default guy. I felt like Stu was that at the beginning of the season, where it's just like, man, I think the writing's on the wall that like you're kind of on the trade block. You're number one on the trade block right now if we're making a move. I think I've considered this. We've kind of talked about Denver a little bit in our DBB group chat, and I don't know if Cam Johnson is better than Duncan Robinson is today. So I don't know that if I want to pry Cam Johnson loose, if it means giving up Duncan, because from a contract and maybe a player standpoint and maybe a fit on this roster, Duncan Robinson might be more valuable than Cam Johnson now.
I would agree with that. I think that Duncan Robinson's movement shooting is not something that Cam Johnson brings at the level that Duncan Robinson brings it. But the bigger issue to me, and I don't want to be dismissive. Yeah, it's injuries, because Cam Johnson's a very talented basketball player, but he's going to be 30 years. He's going to be 31. Actually, at the start.
I'm 34. Wes, what does that mean?
Well, I'm 28. Yeah, we're all old men now, Robbie. That's how this goes in the NBA. But my point, he's going to be 31. He missed a ton of last season, and he hasn't played 60 or more games since 2021-22, and he has a history of lower body and back injuries.
Maybe you're getting 50 games out of him.
Yeah, like he's older than you think because he was a late career prospect when he came out. He's got a bunch of injury history. He's not really an on-ball guy. That's nothing he can really do. And he has lost quite a bit of athleticism over the years. Not that he was ever like a peak athlete or something like that, but he's lost a little bit of pop from all of these. So like, I'm just out. I don't want to pay the contract that he's going to earn for, 45, 50 games of, okay. Yeah. Pretty good. And here's what he did in Denver, by the way, 12 points, about 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists. It was only 1.1 stocks total. He's supposed to be a 3-and-D player. That's not awesome. He did shoot well from 3, 43%. If that's the year you're going to have next to perhaps the best playmaker in the NBA, in Nikola Jokic, Cade Cunningham ain't fixing it,
Let me tweak this question for you. What if it's Aaron Gordon instead of Cam Johnson? Does that appeal you at all?
The player appeals to me more, but I have the same injury concerns. So, bad podcasting here, but let me pull up Aaron Gordon on Basketball Reference just to get it all right. He will also be 31 years old next season. He played 36 games last year.
I didn't realize it was that few.
3 years ago, though, he did play 73. So he's got more years over 60 than 60 games played than Cam Johnson does. The other thing, though, is that he's also been in the league longer. He came out, if you could believe it, all the way back in 2014, 2015 as a 19-year-old. So he's got more NBA tread on the tires. Another guy, he was the pinnacle of NBA athlete for quite some time. He's still a very good athlete, but again, lower body injuries kind of taking some of that away. He was better for Denver. He's been really good for Denver for a while now, but I don't know if you could promise me that he was going to get 70 games, 68 games, his first 3 years in Denver, what he did, then I'd be interested. I just don't think that that's going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if there's any forward/wing that would be attractive to this team that's on Denver, it's going to be Peyton Watson. But, with him in restricted free agency, and we already have our own restricted free agency problems, the chances of going to get a different restricted free agent when you have not landed a deal with your own restricted free agent just seems like a very, very small chance of that happening. So I think probably the Denver's anything with Denver is probably off the table.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too to keep in mind with, honestly, a lot of the names that are going to be kind of thrown around at this point, this late in the offseason, is just how much of an upgrade are they really over John Collins? No one's going to be taking Asar Thompson's spot here. So if you're going to go and pay big money for Peyton Watson to try to steal him from Denver and get him into Detroit, is he really better than what John Collins was doing for the Clippers the last couple of years? I don't know. Maybe it is. He shot more threes and at a higher percentage. That's true. I think he's a better defender. He's also a lot more perimeter oriented. John Collins gives you a little bit of that 4-5 versatility. Peyton Watson would not. Is this really the guy that you want to send a bunch of money to and have him take over that 4 spot long term? I just don't know. There just aren't a ton of exciting names left at this point because it's darn near August.
I remember Shams Charania, his tweet when Collins was signed for Detroit. He always sends 2 to 3 of them afterwards or whatever. But one of them, it was worded weirdly, he's going to get the opportunity to start, or I forget exactly what the verbiage was. It kind of
made it sound like they had promised him a starting spot.
Right. And so at that point, I almost think no power forwards is in or at least a starting level power forward because he started a little bit in Utah. He came off the bench a little bit. So it's just if he wants to start, and that was kind of okay, we're going to give you the starting power forward position. And maybe that also incentivized him to take the 2 non-guaranteed deals. So I also don't know if a power forward of starting level, competition is even going to be out there. So I feel like we are getting to the point in the off season, that meme where it's like a weird drawing, but the guy has a stick and he's like poking something and it just says do something, I feel like that's where we're all in the off season, where it's like, oh, Benedict Mathurin. Yeah. Like he could be good. DeMar DeRozan. It's just any name that is out there. It's like, yeah, he's a Piston. Let's come on, Trajan, do something. And frankly, go ahead.
Last thing I want to say, and then I think we can close it out here. But like, if Ron Holland were on the Brooklyn Nets last year, and he had a bunch more opportunity, I would bet money. This is actually good full circle. I just said I would bet money.
Started with betting,
put a bow on it. I would bet money that a lot of Pistons fans right now would look at the year he would have had with more opportunity, ball in his hands, more shot attempts, and say, I'd be interested in bringing that guy in right now, just like a lot of Pistons fans are interested in, say, a Peyton Watson. We have a Peyton. Like, I don't want to, like, they're not literally the same player, but you know what I mean? We have the young forward that has a lot of potential, showing some flashes, and you're interested in their potential, what they could be over the next few years. We got that guy. He's Ron Holland. He's just been on a good team, not on a lesser good team. With more
you hope he can get to Peyton Watson in a year or two.
Yeah, exactly.
2 years younger than Peyton. You hope that, he can get to that point. Now,
it's the classic, we have McDonald's at home.
Right. And if you get to February and you're tired of McDonald's and you want to trade your McDonald's for an upgrade, then maybe you do that in February.
Burger King. I think I saw that coming. Do not. No. That is never a trade you want to make.
That's a downgrade to McDonald's. That's for sure.
Absolutely. On that note,
perfect.
I feel we have to end. So, Robbie, I'll throw it over to you. But of course, guys, if you're here with us live, really appreciate you. The chat was great today. A lot of really interesting comments, interesting insights, and it seemed like it was all very respectful as well, which Bryce brings it up all the time on the Pistons Pulse, but it's true here. We got great Pistons fans that are getting involved with this. So appreciate all you guys. And Robbie, I'll let you close us on out.
Yep. Thanks for hanging out, chat. We appreciate it. Be sure to like before you head out. Be sure to subscribe to the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. Just got over 1,000 subscribers. I saw that just eclipsed that mark. So make sure that if you want to leave a voicemail, we did not get any voicemails this week, but if you want to leave a voicemail to hear yourself on the show next week, make sure you call 313-355-2717, and we'll play your question on the air next time. But special thank you to Sean Korp, our managing editor over at Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to everybody for the great questions and everything that we discussed today. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us over on YouTube. We cannot wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you.